cultures that say time is money, or cultures that when a person is asked what they're doing or why they're doing something, they say, I'm just killing the time. This is not something that is befitting to the Muslim, because the Muslim realizes that this time, these days and these nights and these hours and these minutes and these seconds, these are the vessels wherein he sows the seeds by his actions for the fruits and the rewards that he will harvest on the day of judgment, يعني يوم القيامة, in the akhirah. And yet, despite how important time is, it is one of the easiest things for a person to waste. There's a very famous line of poetry, and it says, وَالْوَقْتُ أَنْفُسُ مَا عَنَيْتَ بِحِفْظِهِ. Time is the most valuable thing that a person could dedicate, yani protecting, his protecting. Yani time is the most important thing that a person can protect. وَأَرَاهُ أَسْهَلَ مَا عَلَيْكَ يَضِيعُ. Yet I see it as being the easiest thing that a person could waste. And one of the examples that we have which illustrate how the Muslim should be diligent and keen with regards to how he uses and benefits his time is this description of one of the Salaf with regards to how he described the Sahaba. He said, أَدْرَكْتُ قَوْمٍ هُمْ أَحْرَصُوا عَلَى وَقْتِهِمْ مِنْكُمْ عَلَى دَنَانِيرِ. He said, I met a people, yani referring to the Sahaba, they were more keen in protecting their time than you are with regards to the protection of your dananir, your money. And we know that there are some people, yani, they know where every cent goes. They're keen to protect their money because they know the importance of this. But when it comes to time, they waste it. And we look here in this narration that the Sahaba are keen to benefit from their time. And when we look at the verses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also in the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, we see the importance, not only the importance of time, but also the fact that we will be questioned about how we use this time. And Shaykh Mustafa Hafidhullah ta'ala, he began by reminding us of those things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swore by. And we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not swear by anything in the Quran except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swearing by that thing indicates the importance and the greatness of that thing that's being sworn by. I'll mention some of the verses that Shaykh Mustafa didn't mention. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by al-fajr, wal-fajr, wa-layalin 'ashr. Also, wal-duha, wal-layli idha shajar, wal-layli idha yaghsha. And the ulama mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swore by these different times. The night, time in and of itself. Fajr, the time of duha, early morning. Wal-layl, nighttime. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swore by these times to illustrate the importance of these times. And not only that, but these times, these are the vessels wherein we do a'mal as-salihah. That these are the times or the envelopes for our actions. That our actions that we do, they're going to happen during these times. And it's a reminder for us of utilizing those times in things that are beneficial to us and bring us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And due to this fact, you find that the ulama, several of the ulama of hadith, from them, Ibn Sunni, wa Ibn Hajar, wa Nasa'i, wa Suyuti, they all have books entitled Amal al-Yawm wal-Layla, the actions of the day and the night. So the question poses itself, why did the ulama write these books? They wrote these books to let the Muslim know that there is no time during the day and the night except that you have an example in the Prophet ﷺ and a reminder of what should be done. Meaning that the Muslim is cognizant that time is something that is used for him, or it will be a proof or a hujjah against him. So the individual, in reading these books, he understands that from the time he wakes up, and from the time he wakes up until the time he goes to sleep, and everything that transpires in his days and nights, that he has either actions that can be done or statements that can be said, and utilizing his time and doing things that are going to bring him closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the hadith that Sheikh Mustafa mentioned, and I'll mention it again, just the part that's related to time, wherein the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam stated, لن تزول قدم عبد يوم القيامة حتى يسأل عن أربع. The Prophet ﷺ said that a person's foot, the foot of the servant will not move on the day of judgment until he is asked about four things. And from those four things, the first two are related to time. عن عمره فيما أفنى. Person will be asked about his life and how he spent, or what did he do during his life. وعن شبابه فيما أبلاه. And also with regards to his youth, and how or in what manner or capacity did he use this youth. And this hadith was narrated by Tirmidhi. Shaykh Albani rahimahullah ta'ala deemed it as being authentic. So here we understand from this hadith that the person will be questioned about this time, his life, what he did therein, and also his youth. What did he do? Shaykh Ibn Baz rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions, فَأَنْتَ مَسْؤُولٌ عَنْ هَذِهِ الْأُمُورِ فَعَلَيْكَ أَنْ تُعِدْ جَوَابًا. You will be asked about these issues mentioned in this hadith, and from these two that are related to time. So it is incumbent upon you, or obligatory upon you, to prepare an answer. And this is a reminder to the youth who may be listening to this lecture. You will be asked about your youth and what you used in it. You will be asked about your time. So prepare an answer. Do you have an answer if you were to die? If you were to die today, and we know that the Prophet ﷺ said, death is closer to any one of you than the straps of his sandals. And death, لا يفرق, death does not distinguish between young and old. What answer have you prepared for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He asks you about this time? Ya Rab, I spent 15 hours, 10 hours a day on Facebook, social media. Days, months, years went by, and I didn't read Quran. And I didn't do those things that you made obligatory upon me, because I was engrossed in other things. This is important, and it's important for our youth to realize that this culture of I'm still young, I can be religious when I get older, I can do those things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made obligatory upon me when I get older. The youth have to realize that this is not from the culture of the Muslim who fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and wants to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam reminding us that the person will be asked about his youth. Also, the ulama mentioned that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned youth, shabab, in youth, in Arabic and in Shara, it's a little bit broader than the Western conceptualization of youth. The ulama mentioned from basically the time of puberty until his early 30s. That this time, this is a vital time because it is the time of strength, between two times of weakness. Yani the weakness of being a child and being dependent upon others and not being able to do things on his own. And then the weakness of old age, wherein the person returns to being dependent on others to take care of his needs. So the ulama mentioned that the shabab, yani this was mentioned because this is the time of strength. And when we look at the Quran, we find that there are several examples of individuals who made the most of this youth. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about Ibrahim alayhi salam. When Ibrahim broke the idols, and again, Ibrahim was by himself essentially, and he was a young man. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, قالوا من فعل هذا بآلهتنا إنه لمن الظالمين قالوا سمعنا فتى يذكرهم يقال له إبراهيم. When they asked, they said, who did this to our idols? Verily, this person is from the oppressors or the wrongdoers. And they said, سمعنا فتى. We heard a young man. يقال له إبراهيم. We heard a young man, and his name is Ibrahim. Here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this word fata, yani a young man. Ibrahim was in his youth. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Al-Kahf, إنهم فتية آمنوا بربهم وزدناهم هدى. Verily, they were a group of young men. فتية, yani the plural of the word that was used to describe Ibrahim, fata. The plural is fitya. A group of young men, آمنوا بربهم. They believed in their Lord. وزدناهم هدى. And we increased them in their guidance. So we have examples in the Quran, and there are other examples as well. Likewise, many of the companions, when they accepted Islam, in the early days of Islam, they were shabab. And in the battle of Badr, children who had accepted Islam, fighting against their fathers who were still upon shirk in the battle of Badr. So many of the early followers of the Prophet ﷺ were from the shabab. Likewise, we have examples from the ulama. Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani al-Maliki rahimahullah ta'ala, he has a very well-known book entitled Al-Risala, which is a book in Maliki fiqh. Ibn Abi Zayd, he wrote this book and he was 17 years old. This book is still read today and is considered one of the major books for fiqh al-Maliki. He wrote it, authored this book at the age of 17. And even more so, al-Muqaddimah, the introduction to this book, he mentions that he was writing this book for youth who were younger than him. These are examples of how the ulama recognize the benefit, recognize the importance of time and using this time, and using particularly shabab, this time of strength. Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad ibn Abdur-Rahman rahimahullah ta'ala authored, they said that he authored Kitab al-Tawheed when he was 19 years old. Shab, a young man. Also from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ightanim khamsin qabla khamsin." Benefit from 5 before 5. Again, we have that shababik qabla haram, yani your youthfulness or your young days before your old age. That's related to time. And we already mentioned that which was related to